Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today for another Rock Jumper Dream Destination series. Today, we are traveling to the incredible country of Colombia. This is one we're really looking forward to because nowhere on our planet can more birds be found, with the total heading towards the 2,000 mark. Joining us today is one of Rock Jumper's most popular guides, Forrest Rowland, back for his second webinar, and we could not think of anyone more appropriate to showcase Colombia's natural splendor, given his depth of knowledge in the region. Prepare to be enthralled as Colombia offers a truly mind-blowing birding experience. Some interesting facts about Forrest that you might not be aware of is that he is involved in 2 conservation boards, Montana Birds Records Committee, and sits on the board of his local Audubon chapter, as well as being on the committee that is restoring the downtown Bosman wetlands and building a nature center. However, when not guiding or in a committee meeting, Forrest sings, plays guitar and the piano, and has been hosting photo workshops in Yellowstone and Grand Tetons National Park. Thank you, Forrest. Take us to Colombia.
Welcome everyone to, I guess this is my second webinar, and I think our first on one of all the Rock Jumper leaders' favorite countries, and one of mine, Colombia. Colombia is near and dear to my heart. As you can see from the first slide here, I made my first trip down there in 2004, which is kind of amazing. My first official visit. I'd actually gone the year previous to visit some friends, having a bunch of Colombian friends from Ecuador in my time living there. So what I'd like to do is I'll kind of take you through a little bit of an intro of Colombia. It's a huge country with a lot of ground to cover, and rightly so. It's been dubbed in recent years as the birding nation because it has more species than any other country. And it also has this amazing kind of new burgeoning avi-tourism culture that is really coming along nicely as well. In fact, the Antioquia Ornithological Society, I believe, is the oldest in South America, and that's it. Yeah. So we can't talk about Colombia without talking about the amazing diversity that defines it, really. And so if you look at this visual here, on this slide, you can see the sort of 4, you could say 3, but it's really more like 5 distinct mountain ranges, not including some of the smaller ones on the outliers. But here we have the Eastern Andes, Central Andes, Western Andes, and then the famous Santa Marta Mountains and the Serranía de Parakeet up here on the Venezuelan border. So when you have all that elevation relief and all that isolation, you get huge diversity. And of course, they're divided by very important river features. We've got the Cauca here, and then the Magdalena running all the way up to the Caribbean as well. And all of this out to the east, we have some llanos in the north and a lovely Amazonian forest with this cool kind of Guyanan shield influence in the sort of southeast. So yeah, you're just chock full of amazing diverse habitats, many of which can be driven to within a single day, moving around the mountains, through the valleys, etc. It's very cool. And so the bird nation, 70 plus endemics and counting. There have been a couple new species described in Colombia just in the last few years, several actually. And with more birders going down there, and more importantly, many Colombians really being enthusiastic about the bird life that they have there and the diversity that they can enjoy. There are really some spectacularly gifted birders, bird guides, and scientists there in Colombia doing some work. They've got the bird list up to nearly 2,000 species. It's incredible, 1/5 of the planet's birds in one country. Truly remarkable. Now, the diversity also extends to hospitality. One thing that's really neat in Colombia is that there's so many people that enjoy nature that they've got great, great accommodations, great food, and a lot of really wonderful experiences to be had throughout the country. So here we have one of the Paraves reserves. This is the Chestnut Capija Reserve. This is where you take all your meals on the left. And then the beautiful, very new structure up outside of Pereira, where we go for Fuertes Parrot to stay near some hot springs there on the right. And again, can't express just how wonderful Colombians are and how, really accepting and excited they are about foreign visitors, especially, people who are truly interested in what they have to offer in terms of nature, culture, all that good stuff. So, you can see in the corner, there's CG sitting with some kids. We are about to mount on horses to take about a 5-hour horseback ride up into the middle of nowhere to go look for some rare birds in northern Colombia here. And this is a different horseback ride, but also to accentuate, when you have so much remote, pristine area, some of the more exciting places take a little bit more adventure and effort to get to. And that's really nice. It's actually wonderful to be able to get on horseback for an hour or two and be up in the Paramo. Here we're all mounting up and heading towards the Dusky Starfrontlet Preserve, which is unfortunately not closed, but we went there to see Urao and Pitta and Dusky Starfrontlet and a bunch of other really cool birds that are up in the northern elfin forests. Other interesting modes of transport. So yeah, we do take, despite the photos, we take planes, we take buses. We have very nice vehicles that we use to get around. But sometimes we also hop in a boat. You can see on the left, longtime friend and client of mine here, Bernie, had just got his city-capped puffbird after taking a boat ride through the mangroves in Bocas del Atrato in northern Colombia. And on the right, you have something that you'll see frequently in Colombia are these incredibly ornately adorned chivas, is what they call them. Chiva's a goat, if you translate it literally into Spanish. But these are this relatively inexpensive public transport that, and I'm not sure if you can see it here, the artists that paint these are so proud of their work and take it so seriously, they actually leave a name and phone number in the bottom right corner. So if you want your chiva painted with the expertise of the chiva you're looking at, you can call them up and they'll do you a solid. So that's another cool thing to see in Colombia. On the rare occasion, we asked for some help in toting the luggage around and all this good stuff. So here at the Blue-billed Curacao Preserve, two of the park rangers who are awesome, not just maintaining the buildings and the infrastructure, but the customer service in Colombia is it's insane. It really is. It's all out for everyone's comfort. So these guys brought down their dirt bikes, strapped our luggage to their dirt bikes, and are taking them up to the road where we're going to walk to meet our vehicles to get in and out of that particular preserve. So yeah, there's really no links that the Colombians won't go to help us out. Now, the rest of this webinar is going to kind of follow more or less chronologically the mega tour. Ran the first mega tour in the early 2010s, I think it was 2014 or so, with the intent on seeing more than 1,000 species in less than a month, which we have achieved many times since. And on that first trip as well. So it might have moved a little bit, but the nice thing I like about using this to sort of showcase Colombia is you can see it visits a lot of not only the more famous areas, but a lot of the more remote areas as well in search of many, many birds, but also focusing on the endemics of Colombia. So yeah, we'll just kind of run through here and we can start, as most tours do, in Bogota. So yeah, pretty much everybody's going to arrive to Bogota, typically speaking, though there are some direct flights to Medellin these days. But it's a good place to start because there are a lot of special birds and wonderful birding opportunities right around Bogota. So a few of the places that we hit are Parque La Florida, Chicaque, Sumapaz, and the area around Chingaza, which includes some really amazing hummingbird feeder setups and bird feeder setups just in the area right there around Bogota. Around the Siecha, you have these amazing capillas, these old churches, some of the the oldest native cultures in Colombia, but as well as the older colonial structures are in the area. And this is another kind of typical scene of the habitat in the Eastern Andes around Bogota. You can see a little mosaic of forest and pasture land, some water features, but lots of mountains, and lots of great forest, especially around Chingasa and Chichaque. This is a very nice shot of some paramo. So once you get up high enough, and you can around Chingasa and Sumapaz, you go right out of tree line, and you're up in these kind of high elfin. You can see this elfin scrub here, but you can also see in the bottom right side of the picture, you get right up above that line into just alpine grasslands. So you have some cushion plants. These cool plants you see here are Spletia. And this is one of the more common species, maybe the first species you're likely to see in Colombia, the rufous collared sparrow. They're pretty common from southern Central America south, but a beautiful song in our local site. Another bird you'll probably recognize is the pied-billed grebe. Plenty of pied-billed grebes in the Savannah de Bogota. And some Andean and ruddy ducks around as well. And this is one of the stars of the show, Bogota Rayo. Named, it's really only around in marshes around the Savannah de Bogota, which is this huge kind of high plain, marshy plain that Bogota has been built in. And Apollinar's red. This is a really neat species that can only be found in certain specific habitats around the Savannah de Bogota as well. And one of the tougher endemics sometimes, but usually shows well as this one did. Spot-flanked gallinule has a really interesting range. There's this small disjunct population right around Bogota in the high elevation marshes. The majority of its range is in lowland marshes in Brazil, Argentina, places like that. So it's really kind of interesting to see the subspecies that's there in Colombia, which might someday give its own species designation. Yellow hooded blackbird, same story. High elevation species around Bogota, but the rest of its range is relatively low elevation, all the way down to parts of Central and Southern South America. Beautiful bird. And this one has a much smaller range. Flame-winged parakeets really only on the east slope of the Eastern Andes, right up Bogota, a couple hundred miles north. But big efforts have been made to boost their numbers by Proaves and other foundations that have set up nest box efforts. So we always try and see brown-breasted parakeet. I really like the old name, so I tend to call it flame-winged parakeet, even though technically it's now called brown-breasted. Golden-fronted red star, it's pretty common endemic, seen around in forests and especially mixed flocks around Bogota. The blue-throated star frontlet is one of many gorgeous species of hummingbirds seen around Bogota, and its range extends a little bit into Venezuela, but certainly these days Colombia is the place to see this spectacularly colored bird. The palette on this bird is pretty unrivaled. Although golden-bellied star frontlet, which is closely related to it, and also seen around Bogota, is pretty close in being equally spectacular. Coppery-bellied puffleg is endemic, seen in the elfin forest high up around Bogota. You can make out a little bit of that sapphire shining blue vent as well. And the sword-billed hummingbird, of course. One of the feeder stations we go to has a few male sword-billed hummingbirds coming to the feeders, and it's always incredible to see these unique birds. There are also some spots where ant pitters are being fed. Of course, Ecuador's the original place, I suppose, that popularized this, but Colombia and Peru and other countries have quickly caught on. And so now you have several places you can go and see ant pittas up close, like this rufous ant pitta, which has recently been proposed to be, I think, 7 species in total. So going to be really interesting to see how that shakes out. They look different, they sound different. I think Colombia is going to have 5 different rufous ant pitta types in it when everything shakes out and it's all said and done. Black-capped tarantulate. It's a really handsome little bird. We often think of flycatchers as being fairly drab, but this flock leader, it's one of the birds that goes around at the front and core of the mixed flocks near Bogota, is an attractive little flycatcher commonly seen. along with masked flower piercer, which frequents hummingbird feeders as much as it does mixed flocks. Forests. Rufous-browed conebill is a really nice near-endemic seen in the eastern Andes around Bogota. And mustached brush finch. Again, a lot of these birds have a range that just barely creeps into Venezuela, but mostly contained in Colombia. And mustached brush finch is well seen in Chicaque around Bogota. This is, pardon me. Ooh, snuck up on me. This is a beautiful scarlet-bellied mountain tanager. Now you can see these all the way down to Peru, Bolivia. They have a really big range, but man, nothing wrong with seeing this bird in multiple countries on multiple occasions. It's a big, showy, beautiful tanager, common in mixed flocks. Black-chested mountain tanager, much less common, and only really occupies a very small elfin forest elevation range, but outside of Bogota, it's a great place to see this type of bird. Rufous-breasted chat tyrant, another fine example of how flycatchers can be beautiful. And the plush cap. Again, one of the more sought-after kind of bamboo highland forest specialists here. The plush cap, Chicaque especially, is a really good place to see this species, which on rare occasion tees up like this. It's not every day that you get to see a plush cap like you do in this photo. But this particular bird was singing away and allowed pretty close approach at Chicaque near Bogota. Barred fruit eater is another beautiful bird in the highland forest nearby. And if you get really lucky, you might stumble into a Stygian owl, sometimes even in the metropolitan park areas around Bogota if they've got them staked out. Now, moving from Bogota on the mega tour, drastic change, we flew out to Me Too, which is right on the border with Brazil. It has a lot of garden shield habitats and Amazonian diversity. Not featured here, I kind of mentioned Puerto Inirida and Leticia here in the notes on the side. You have a lot more llanos and different influences from the north in the Orinoco drainages once you go further north of where we are in Me Too, which is certainly more an Amazon basin on shields type of allofauna. But yeah, it was founded as an indigenous hub, 26 different dialects spoken in the area. They used to all come to the place that we flew to make trade and do commerce. And this is how we first flew to Me Too. I had to include this photo because our regular jetliner, the flight got canceled, something happened there. And so we had to scramble and we managed to charter some space on this beautiful old DC-3, which was kind of the workhorse in the first couple world wars there. But this particular one had original decals on it, and it was really amazing to just, take this slow 2-hour flight over Amazonian forest out to Me Too in this old, truly historic kind of plane. And so here's Me Too situationally. It's that dot right in the middle, and you can see that there's essentially a road that goes into the forest, goes down to a hydroelectric plant, and then a few ranches and farms have been built along that road. But for the most part, any direction you go for hundreds of miles, it's nothing but forest and small villages. This is a typical scene atop one of the basalt domes. These huge basaltic monoliths come right out of the forest, and you can stand on them and gaze out across the Amazonian rainforest. Really cool. And this is kind of a white sand marshy riverine habitat. one of the particular forests there is the white sand forest. We try to spend some time in. You can get terra firma on one side, white sand on the other. Tons of diversity, and these wonderful, quick flowing black water streams that go through the hard rock as well. And the birding is really fun, and despite being Amazonian, which can be dead hard, it can be really tough. Lots of dense foliage and tough birds to suss out of the undergrowth. A lot of what we do in Me Too is from the few roads, the 2 tracks, and then the main road, and there are some nice trails as well. So you can have good views of special birds without getting your boots too muddy. You can see in this photo our boots look relatively clean, which you can't say for every day, that's for sure. So common birds in the area: blue-gray tanager, huge range, pretty easily seen, lovely bird. There's a green orpendula sneaking its head out from behind the cecropia leaves here. Me Too is a great place for green and olive orpendulas and many other orpendula species, which are all spectacular. And this is one of the white sand forest specialists that people look for, cherries and wren. Very habitat specific, actually, in one of the native endemic plants for that habitat there, and pretty snazzy little antbird. Merry warbling antbird, also a near endemic there to that habitat. And this is probably the holy grail of the site, the gray-bellied antbird. Not an easy bird to see. It's very terrestrial, goes around on the ground or very near to it almost all the time, foraging. And it's only found in white sand forests in 1 or 2 sites in Brazil. And the rest of the sites are all known from around the Me Too area where it's most easily accessed. So a really special bird. And this one might be my favorite, chestnut-crested antbird. Certainly that genus Regmatorina is kind of my favorite. But these guys are true ant followers. So you really need an ant swarm to come across a family group of these. But they're very vocal. And you can also listen for them in bicolored antbirds, and you'll know where an ant swarm is, and you can walk up to it and try and enjoy that spectacle, which we often get to see in Me Too. Again, another very special bird, basically only seen around Me Too. Guianan cock of the rock. So most people think that this is probably only in the Guianan area. It sneaks over as far as Me Too in the west. So it's kind of the far western point of its range. And there are several really awesome leks where you can get some close views of up to 7, 9 males doing their dance, making their noises. It's really, really spectacular. Another shot of this guy. And wire-tailed manakin. It was really relatively recently that we found a couple spots for this one around Me Too, but another one of the showy displaying mannequins here, which we know a couple of sites for, and just a shiny little jewel in the deep forest. And striated mannequins. These little guys are a lot of fun. They were called striped mannequin, but they've split them into a few species. So, azure-naped jay is a tough one. Sometimes they're missed, but usually when you see them, you'll see them in family flocks of 8 to 15. They kind of roam through the deep forest around Me Too, and sometimes just set up really nicely for a good view. Again, I think Me Too is probably the best, if not only place to currently view this species on the planet. Spotted puffbird, a little more widespread. Plenty of cool puffbirds in the forest from there, spotted kind of like the mid-stories, sometimes the understory. And then you have collared puffbird, a little rare even, but sometimes obliges like this one did. And plenty of jackmars also. This beautiful yellow-billed jackmar is something that we look for in the forest and have some nice territories to enjoy in Me Too as well. More widespread species, of course, are the flockbirds. They can be in all sorts of different habitats and move through the upper stories. But yellow-bellied dacnus is one of the members, and of course the beautiful red-legged honey creeper, which again has a broad range, but can't see enough of these. Blue dacnus, another widespread bird, but always beautiful to see. And one of my favorite species, and certainly one of the more gaudy birds on the planet, is the paradise tanager. You can kind of sit here and try and count the colors, but they're just phenomenal to see. And plenty of toucan representatives as well. Ivory-billed arsari being my personal favorite. There are, I think we get 6, 7 species of toucanets, including some really rare ones like honey-tufted toucanet that are only seen around Me Too. And if you're up in the Llanos, sometimes in Me Too you can get lucky, but especially if you're up around Puerto Negrita in the Llanos, you get some exposure to amazing megafauna like this giant anteater. Giant otter are in some of the rivers as well. This one's munching down on some species of peacock bass there. And if you're really lucky, a jaguar. Jaguars are often seen at a couple of the bigger haciendas in the Llanos of Colombia. Capuchin bird is another one that's almost exclusively seen in the Llanos in Colombia. Makes its way across to Guyana as well, but one of the best displayed noises on Earth. It sounds like a big kind of braying cow noise. A really cool thing to see, and they're huge. They're quite large birds, much larger than I think people expect when they first stumble into them. And along some of the rivers, you get black skimmer and this beauty, hide plover. They move up and down the rivers with the water levels. And so, yeah, so that is our sort of Me Too Amazonian experience that we do on the mega tour. From there, we go back to the Eastern Andes, but hit a little bit different area than we were around Bogota, a little bit further north there, and you can get some different habitats, more foothill forest with a bit more of the Magdalena Valley influence. You can see here where the pin is set. It's kind of right up against the Magdalena Valley, the river's on the far left, as the mountains begin. So you get some really special birds in there, and a lot of beautiful forest on a couple of the preserves that we access and spend time in that area. Beautiful, beautiful spots. And amazingly dense forest. Everything's covered in lichens, bromeliads, orchids, etc. There's not an inch of space wasted. And this is one of the trickier birds. I don't know how we got this photo. Upper Magdalena tapaculo is one of the more difficult tapaculos. And that's saying something, because all tapaculos can be pretty difficult unless they decide to show themselves for you. So yeah, this is one of the endemics we look for in that area. And then one of the birds that has a broader range but comes to some feeder setups here is lined quail dove. It's a very cool thing to see well and see at leisure. And the Cephalus wren is one of the most critically endangered birds on Earth. There might be as few as maybe 200, 300 pair. And then a few pair that I call home right around the lodge we stay in when we're in this region. And so that's, though he's not the flashiest bird, he's got an amazing song. And I always make a special effort to get good views of that. Parker's antbird is another cool endemic. This is kind of a fun shot, looking kind of mousy there. Parker's antbird is in the Andes, kind of all three Andean ranges in Colombia, but confined to Colombia and easily seen in this part of the country. Mustache puffbird. Everybody loves puffbirds, especially because they sit there. When you find them, they don't seem to scare too much. So this mustache puffbird is singing to a mate in this photo here. But mustache puffbird is one of the ones we hope to and often do encounter even several times on the mega tour, starting with this area. And a lovely endemic hummingbird. There aren't too many, mostly are all black hummingbirds out there, black metaltail. There's a few exceptions. Black Inca is a gorgeous bird with that nice turquoise shoulder spot. It is endemic to Magdalena East Andean slopes, as is this indigo-capped hummingbird. Very flashy guy, really common at some of the feeders there. Green hermit's one of the more widespread, more common species that comes to plants in the gardens and sometimes the feeders there, as is Andean emerald. Some of you might recognize either from Colombia or other countries, aptly named in the middle elevations throughout the Andes. And white-necked jacobin. I just can't throw a jacobin shot in here. They're super common hummingbird, but always spectacular and fun to see, especially if you can snap a cool pic like this. Columbia's crowned taranulate. Not a spectacularly showy bird, but one of the more enigmatic species that makes its way all the way down into kind of central and southern Peru. There might even be some records from Bolivia, but they're very scattered, and it's not really well understood, the habitat requirements. But this is one that we frequently see in this area at this spot in Colombia. We also make special effort to see the double-banded graytail. This is one of the weirder, I guess, more unique members of the Furnariidae family, which has 300 plus species, nearly 350 species in it. This one makes, huge stick nests and has some really neat kind of rattling calls. But right around where we go, around Nitzazul is a really good area to see this relatively scarce, small-ranged bird, which ranges from the Darien of Panama down to about here. Recurve-billed bushbird. Yeah, you kind of talk about grail birds. This is definitely one of them. It's one of the harder antbird species to see, but every now and then you get lucky. And if you look at that bill, they use that bill to pry larvae and other insects out of bamboo in the kind of foothill, lower elevation forest, this special bamboo forest along the eastern Andes there. It's really, really spectacular bird to see, which we do make an effort on 3 of our different tours to find. Black-chested jay is a widespread but beautiful jay that you see in the area. Orange-chin parakeets, very, very common, numerous bird. A lot of fun to see. These are the nest hole. And spectacled parrotlets, super cute. I don't know how this guy's hanging from one nail in a spider web, but there you go. He is. Didn't weigh much. Scrub tanager, a common, beautiful tanager of the area. And bay-headed tanager, of course. This one's got a big range, but some have green bellies in spots, blue bellies in other areas. Just always a treat to see. Crimson-backed tanager. Everywhere you go in kind of Central and South America, there's a member of this genus of tanagers, and they're all super showy with big, bright lower mandibles and shades of red. Chestnut-cap brushfinch, widespread common brushfinch seen. And this little beautiful flycatcher, as you can tell, I like to throw in pretty exceptional flycatchers on occasion. The ornate flycatcher is one of my faves for sure. He likes kind of lower elevation and foothill forests throughout the Andes and is a vocal, fun, easy bird to watch. So from here, we move a little bit lower into the Magdalena Valley. Much more tropical lowland rainforest sensation here. Lots of endemics and of course, great lodging, which is really a theme throughout this as well. So you can get an idea of some of the forests and the hills there. So even though it's tropical, it's very much not flat because the Magdalena Valley is kind of carved out its riverine valleys to make its way north to the Caribbean. And you can see the influence and importance of this river. It runs the length of the country all the way down to Barranquilla. So yeah, it's a really, really important drainage. And we visit a couple places on either side of the river because you have different birds on the central Andean foothills from the east Andean foothills in the Magdalena Valley. So we try and hit the different elevations and expose our clients to some different birds and habitats, and hopefully bump into this beautiful blue-billed curassow. Love the barring on the crest too. Fantastic. But yeah, blue-billed curassow is certainly the star of the show at the Curacao Preserve, aptly named El Pauhio. And now they had a reintroduction program, which was successful. And a few wild birds were attracted to the caged breeding birds. And then over time, the youngsters over generations became quite accustomed. So now in the morning, you go to breakfast and you can be surrounded by like 11 of these things walking through the dining area. It's super cool. Northern screamer, another awesome, really big, showy bird that's only seen in parts of Venezuela and in the Magdalena Valley and northern parts of Colombia. Weird birds, and they do make some pretty incredible noises. And another wetland species in the area, the capped heron, has this really cool disjunct population in the Magdalena Valley, a spectacularly adorned heron, especially during breeding season. Colombian chachalaca is one of the more widespread yet true endemic birds of Colombia. It can be seen in a lot of different habitats, including around Paul Hill and Rio Claro. And the white-mantled barbet. That has a much more restricted range, only on Magdalena Valley drainages, foothill forests. But thankfully vocal, this one's doing a display. Tolima dove. There are probably 5 or 6 reliable locations to see this species on the planet. It's endemic to the central Andean side of the Magdalena Valley and an attractive dove. Tolima blossom crown, same story. They tend to be a little higher in elevation, but overlap somewhat with the dove. And this one's seen taking some nectar from porterweed or verbena on the gardens of one of the hotels we go to, where they're pretty easy to see. Ringed kingfishers, often seen along the Magdalena River and the tributaries therein, as is northern white-fringed ant wren, which kind of sticks to the drier, lower elevation parts of the Magdalena Valley. Bare-crowned antbird likes thickets and wet forests in the low elevations of the Magdalena Valley. And this shining green hummingbird is actually a subspecies from southern Colombia, which might be its full species. But the shining green hummingbird complex is a Magdalena Valley bird all the way out to the coast, where it can be seen around Barranquilla and other parts of that region. Violet-bellied hummingbird, a spectacular lowland rainforest bird that makes it into Colombia. And I threw in another shot of white-necked Jacobin. The black-breasted puffbird is another of the nice kind of deep forest denizens. It makes its way from the Darien, its ranges all the way down into the Magdalena Valley of Colombia, and is one of the species we look for. It's also on the Choco slope as well. So we try to look for this special puffbird on a few of our different tours. Pied puffbird, an adorable little thing that has a couple different subspecies, both of which can be seen on the mega tour. So if they're ever split, you can get Amazonian pied puffbird and northern pied puffbird. The white whiskered puffbird. You can see a theme in these last few slides. This is another Central American species that makes its way into North and Central Colombia. And in Rio Claro, there's a few little cabins we stay in, and there's a breeding pair that usually has a burrow somewhere right behind one of the cabins where we stay. So many mornings and evenings, you walk out your front porch, and there they are sitting on a branch like this, right off your balcony. The gray-cheeked nunlets, a little trickier, smaller species, likes thickets in the Magdalena Valley, but we do make an effort to see this bird as well. And the beautiful woodpecker, aptly named, lots of color. He's got white down his back, golden, orange, red, all this. A very unique endemic to the Magdalena Valley. Kind of replaces black-cheeked woodpecker, if you will, which is from the western slope of the western Andes. And this is one that we see on most of our tours. The Magdalena antbird is a really neat little antbird that's only found in really rocky canyons and grottos. And right around Rio Blanco, there are a few exactly such areas where the limestone caves have been carved out. And sometimes you can even tease one of these guys out of one of these caves through these little boulder fields. Really cool bird to come across, in part because it's color, but almost mostly because of where you see it. You always see it in a really neat, scenic little riverbed grotto kind of situation. Green honey creepers are around as well. Of course, you know, that's a pretty widespread bird, but I'm not sure if they should be called turquoise or blue honey creeper, but anyways, spectacular bird we see frequently. And one of the birds we look for in the area is Choco screech owl. There's a disjunct little population at the Blue-billed Curacao Preserve, which has proven to sit up nicely, like this one. And if you're really lucky, the park rangers will have some crested owls staked out. We've called them in on occasion. They're tough to get to come to playback, but we much prefer to see them kind of just resting, doing their thing during the day, like this beautiful pair. Almost the quintessential owl with those absurdly large eyebrows. But yeah, always a really spectacular bird to see. Mammals are great. This is one of the parts of the tour where you endangered endemic mammals like silvery brown tamarin, which is pretty numerous around Rio Claro and other spots we go to. The Venezuelan howler monkey is sort of the northern version of red howler. Can be seen pretty widespread throughout northern Colombia and Venezuela. But this is really one of the prizes here. Variegated spider monkey is one of the fewest numbering of the spider monkey types. Endemic to the Magdalena Valley, just a few hundred left. But the Blue-billed Curacao Preserve is a great place to see it in a few parts of the park. So from here, we move across into the Central Andes. And we'll first kind of head up north. We go for well, now that they've rediscovered it, the Antioquia brushfinch, as we make our way into the Central Andes. The story behind the discovery of this species is well worth looking up. It's essentially a young man on his way back from church noticed an odd brushfinch that he had actually been seeing a bit in his backyard as well, and decided to get some footage and talk to some folks. And turns out, lo and behold, he rediscovered the Antioquia brushfinch on a morning stroll through town. So here it is, the famous Antioquia brushfinch, just rediscovered 2 years ago. And here we are. I'm on a little private trip up here, but there's the man, second from the left. He is the man who rediscovered the Antioquia brushfinch, and is more than willing to take us around and show it to us again. You can see he's super proud. They even painted a beautiful mural in town for it. And the scenery in the area of the northern central Andes is spectacular. Lots of deep canyons, high mountains, very steep, interesting forest, a lot of nice subtropical forest. So kind of this is the Medellin area. We visit the Antioquia brush finch on our way north to the only place to see the chestnut-capped peacock, which is an endemic, really range-restricted endemic. If you look at the range map, it's like two little dots right at the north end of the central Andes. Only a few hundred of these, well, really only ever seen a few dozen, but suspected a few hundred in population worldwide. And some other cool birds we look for in the area, the yellow-headed manakin, which has this weird disjunct range of volcano in Ecuador, a mountain slope here in Colombia. But in Colombia, we actually have 2 or 3 really reliable places to see it, one of which we visit on the mega tour. And a lovely endemic, a chestnut wood quail. At the Chestnut Peacock Reserve, they put out some grain feeders that the wood quail have become accustomed to. I think they're still showing up. And red-bellied grackle, another famous Colombian endemic that is easily seen in Medellin and in the North and West Andes. Going big flocks, loud, garrulous, flashy, really cool endemic. And one of the more famous ones, if not the poster bird for Colombia, is the multicolored tanager. We get a chance to see that at the Chestnut Peacock Reserve and a couple other spots. Mega tour. And truly spectacular species that looks more like a painting than anything else. Fawn-breasted brilliant. I just really like that shot of him looking right at the camera. But yeah, the fawn-breasted brilliant's found in the large range of the Andes. And yeah, pretty common, very cool feeder bird in that region. Crowned wood nymph, very flashy. Purple back, purple belly, green front, bib, all that kind of good stuff. A really, really beautiful bird. And streaked xenops. It's got a pretty broad range, but mostly in the Andes, it's kind of one of the more montane Furnariidae in terms of especially xenops. It's the highest ranging up the mountains. And occasionally will sit out nicely and call to you. Inca jay, also known as green jay, I suppose, but there is a big gap between ranges of the green jay and this Inca jay, pretty common species in parts of the Andes and beautiful. And of course, there are a few ant pittas that have become accustomed to both people and in some cases worms, like this ochre-breasted ant pitta, which is a beautiful little ant pitta. Lanceolated monklet has a range that goes well up in towards Costa Rica, but is very infrequently seen. And the Chestnut Peacock Reserve, among a few other spots in Colombia, are probably the best places, among the best places to see this species in the world. Bird has made the front cover of many trip reports to Colombia. We tried to put the #1 voted, top 10 #1 voted bird on the cover, and purplish banded tanager is often #1. Speckled tanager, arguably really nice as well. And from here, we move a little further south into the Western Andes and the Chocó, which encompass a few different spots, several different sites that we visit. You can kind of see, this is, well, the Pacific is not visible here, but it would be off to the far left of the screen. But Cerro Montezuma and the Las Tangaras area, which involves 2 different reserves, provide the best access with good infrastructure and accommodation to a huge range, a really big elevation range that go all the way down from 800, 900 meters elevation, right the way up to 3,000 or so meters elevation almost. So you can see this huge elevation range from a couple thousand feet up to almost 10,000 feet. And so you get all the different habitats that the Chocó region includes, anything from foothill rainforest all the way up to high temperate forest. And the places we stay are really cool. I included a shot of the wax palm here on the left. That's where the famous yellow-eared parrot nests. And this kind of area, a few spots in the Western Andes have huge groves of wax palm left for the yellow-eared parrots. And on the right, you can see one of our first groups to Colombia staying what was the old Cerro Montezuma Lodge, if you will, just a few small buildings. Now it's really evolved into something quite beautiful. It's a neat place that they built there. And some of the roads through the Western Andes here are just spectacular. You have some more middle mountain, mid-elevation montane forest on the left, and on the right you're getting into the foothills in the Inca Valley. You can see the roads and some of the paths we walk are just superb. And Andean Cockler Rock is top on the menu, sure. Anywhere you go over there, you want to see a Cockler Rock for sure. And there's some great lakes around the Western Andes. Another really popular and stunning bird from the region is the toucan bobcat, which we look for on most of our tours to visit the region. And orange-breasted fruit eaters, one of the more colorful forest birds that we come across, as well as quetzals. There are a few different species of quetzals in Colombia, golden-headed and crested and white-tipped and all these. And we always try and look for good views of those beautiful birds while we're there as well. The indigo flower piercer is the endemic member of the flower piercers here, and that's aptly named, just deep blue, gorgeous. Chestnut-bellied flower piercer is another endemic, range restricted to very, very high elevation, kind of elfin, almost paramo forests, and it can only be seen at 2 different spots in the Western Andes. Black-chin mountain tanager is one of the more numerous kind of flock birds that comes through, a big, hefty mountain tanager that goes in family groups. Gorgeous bird in the Western Andes. Blue-winged mountain tanager, pretty wide-ranging, also beautiful. And again, purplish mantled tanager. This has got a little fill flash to make those colors pop, but you can really see why it's such a crowd pleaser. A beautiful bird, and really and truly common in the mixed flocks in that area. Black and gold tanager. This is the first representative of a couple we'll look at in what were called the old gorilla tanagers. They were discovered, and then there was a lot of internal strife that came shortly thereafter, historically speaking, 35, 40 years ago. So they sort of named these guys the gorilla tanagers, but it's a group called Bangsias, and they're only seen in kind of the western Choco areas of Colombia, with one exception in Panama. Black and gold tanager, again, always seen on the tours to the region. The other one we look for too is gold ringed tanager. It likes a little higher elevation than the black and gold, though you can see them together sometimes. And this beautiful Banksia is really easily seen at Montezuma and poses nicely for photos fairly often. Gold-chested tanager is a little tougher to get to. You have to get down into the foothills. So the other two are a little more montane. This is more of a foothill species that we see when we visit sort of south central and southwest Colombia in the Inca Valley, especially. You go tanager. Hummingbirds in the area, maybe the best. I hate to say best in the world, but they're certainly some of my favorites. These are 2 of my favorite birds, Impressed Brilliant on the left and the Velvet Purple Coronet. You can see them at the same feeder, mind-blowing colors, just really beautiful. And of course, violet-tailed sylph. You can't really miss that showy long tail either. Also, you can see them at the same feeder as the previous 2 species. And sometimes we, as you spend time in the forest, you get lucky enough to see hummingbirds feeding on natural food sources like this white whiskered hermit that we captured in the Inca Valley. And this songster is one of the rare endemics, only from high elevation forests on the ridges, these outlying ridges of the Western Andes in Colombia, the Munchique wood wren, possibly the best song in Colombia. And olive finch, a wide-ranging bird. I'm sure a few of our viewers have looked for in a few spots and hopefully seen, but if you haven't, go to Montezuma. They come to be kind of hand-fed corn and other bits and pieces of snacks at this little bridge there. It's really ridiculous, but really cool. Tanager finch, oof, a spectacular bird. Breeds from kind of northwest Ecuador, well north into the central and northern West Andes of Colombia. A difficult bird to see, especially during breeding season, but we've had good success getting amazing views of this rare endemic on tours there. And olivaceous peacock here, looking pretty curious, wondering what we're staring at. They like to be kind of silent and quiet, just eating fruit, being sedentary in the deep forests. And yeah, we tend to stumble upon them on our tours to the region, as well as maybe look into day roosting nightjars and other night birds like this lyre-tailed nightjar. Cloud forest pygmy owl. This is a bird I've seen maybe 4 or 5 times. I've heard a few more than that. Despite spending lots of time in its habitat, it's a very low density, was relatively recently described about 20 years ago, maybe a little less, but something that we do look for at both Las Tangaras and Montezuma in the Western Andes. And from here, we go to the Central Andes before we start heading to the far north. And this also has this amazing access to a bunch of different elevations, different habitats, and great bird photography opportunities. Some of the best of any tour to Colombia will be at the infrastructure sites in the Central Andes. And so you can see we hit it pretty hard. There's a lot of different really good spots, but this is really well zoomed in around the Los Nevados National Park. You see those high snowy volcanic peaks, and now there's quite a bit of smoke that's been coming out of a couple of the volcanoes in Los Nevados. Mountaineers like to go up and climb them, but they can't, and they haven't been able to the last few years due to volcanic activity. But it's really pretty cool to be birding these high elevation forests around a smoking volcano. And here's a shot of the Otun River coming through the lush montane subtropic forests around Otun Quimbaya. And this is a little higher up kind of pasture. This is a mixed oak highland forest in the Central Andes. And then you get above that and you get up towards 12,000 feet, 11,000 feet, and you get into the high elevation paramo with a lot of unique birds adapted to that habitat only. One of the coolest experiences is going to the Termales del Ruiz, where they outfit you with your own little handheld hummingbird feeder, and you get to have birds come land on you, which is very cool. It's something that some other places are starting to catch on to too, but as far as I know in Colombia, this was pretty much the first place to endeavor to do this. And many hummingbird species, I've had folks with 5, 6 different hummingbirds land on their hand. One of them is the great sapphire wing. It's almost as big as the giant hummingbird. It is a huge hummingbird. And when it lands on you, you can actually tell it there. It definitely has some heft, big, beautiful armor. Black-thighed puffleg, very range restricted to the Central Andes. And yeah, another one that comes to land on you, as does the beautiful golden-breasted puffleg. It's a little showier than black-thighed, not an endemic. Very cool bird though. And this, rainbow bearded thornbill. Though most of the bird is kind of an olive, darkish gray charcoal color, rufous cap, that orange flare in the cap, and the beautiful, beautiful gorget are pinned on my hand before it was always a lot of fun. Shining sunbeam, one of the few orange hummingbirds of the world. And this is one that everyone looks for, and you have to go very high. It somehow can survive below freezing temps, well above tree line, up to 13,000 feet in the Central Andes. This is the buffy helmet crest, seen feeding from one of its main food sources here around Parque de los Nevados. Now, the ant pitta show in Rio Blanco and a couple other places in the Central Andes is hard to beat. It's right up there on par with the famous Angel Paz of Ecuador. This chestnut crown ant pitta is one of 6 different species that has come to be hand-fed at this feeding station. Brown banded ant pitta, very range restricted endemic, is another one that shows, as does bicolored ant pitta, which is a relatively recent development, only in the past 6, 7 years, 5, 6 years, I suppose, has it been tamed to come to worms. It's quite shy, but also very attractive endemic. And this cute little guy, the slate crowned ant pitta, that's again one of your smaller Crothloriculas, just the size of like a little fluffy ping pong ball that comes out of the bamboo to come grow up some worms. And this beast, the chestnut naped ant pitta. This species might involve a couple different species in actuality, but it's one of the bigger brutes So sometimes you might not actually want it to come to the worm feeder because it does tend to chase other ones off. They're kind of feisty. Anyways, chestnut-napped antpitta, a special bird. And this is probably one of the rarer of the antpittas, of course, barring the brand new species that was just found last year to be in just a couple drainages outside of Cali. The hooded antpitta was very little known. I only saw my first one a few years ago. This is a photo of the first one I've ever seen, and that was at Otunquimbaya, the hooded antpitta. A beautiful, again, little small growlaricula, very rare. And another amazing recent development, crescent-faced antpitta. Again, one of these enigmatic, beautiful kind of ornate antpittas. This one was only right up in the highest stunted bamboo forest, up a tree line, is now being hand-fed at a couple places. So you've got a good chance of seeing crescent-faced antpittas on tour now, whereas your odds before were not quite as good. And even though it's a fruit eater, this particular bird comes in and eats worms alongside the antpittas at Rio Blanco, the green and black fruit eater. You can barely fit it in your camera frame. It's so tame. Another really cool endemic in the area that we look for is the Cauca guan, only a few hundred of those around, but seen well. And the gorgeous red-ruffed fruit crow. There are a few kind of disjunct localities where it can be found throughout South America. And one of the preserves we visit there. It's a really good place to see them. Sometimes we'll see 6 or 8 in the morning. It's pretty amazing. And this is one of the rarest parrots in the world. Maybe 500 or 600 exist. Fuertes's, or the indigo-winged parrot. I've also heard it called the indigo-capped parrot. A lot of names flying around for the same bird, but again, a relatively unknown bird. Just a few sites where you can see this special species that lives mostly off of acorns and fruits in high elevation forests of the central Andes. And the golden plumed parakeet, another endangered species, though it can be found all the way down to northern Peru, endemic to the high elevation temperate forest there, and a good hefty sized parakeet, most frequently seen on tours around Rio Blanco. Rufous fronted parakeet. This is probably one of the harder species because it is incredibly unpredictable despite knowing almost exactly where to go. A small flock in a small area, again, very low number. A lot of them were captured out for pet trade because they like to roost in rock crevices just at or above tree line in the central Andes. So easy to catch, unfortunately, when they emerge in the morning to all fly out together and dawn to feed. So very, very low number species that we look for around Los Nevados. And some more widespread, beautiful birds like Mastrogon, rufous crown, toady flycatcher. And then we head north. You can see in the far north, we're nearing the end of the tour. You can see the days here. Now we're getting up into day 24, 25, etc. You've got Santa Marta, the Perijá area, and Guajira. And so these are 3 very distinct regions. You have endemic birds in the Perijá range that are only found there. But of course, the highest level of endemism almost anywhere that's not an actual island is this island mountain range of the Sierra Nevada Santa Marta, or Santa Marta Mountains, which is one of the more famous, well-known birding sites in all of South America. And there we have a huge elevation range to access all sorts of beautiful birds. We also drive down into this arid peninsula you see sticking out here into the Caribbean, the Guajira Peninsula. And the Guajira Peninsula, since it doesn't have any elevation relief, gets little to no rainfall. And so it's got some really interesting arid habitats and its own birds that can only be found on that little spit of land as well that we look for over there. Here's one of the shots looking towards those beautiful Santa Marta Mountains. In the middle, there's the highest peak in Colombia at about 22,000 feet. That is in the Santa Marta Mountains. Kind of amazing to think that the highest peak in the whole country is 26 miles from the coast. And in this, we're driving up through the pasture lands and beautiful farm areas in the Perijá. And this is what awaits us at top of the Perijá range. Again, just a beautiful, old, heavily eroded and scoured mountain range that offers dramatic scenery. Lovely, lovely place to wake up. And this is a gorgeous sunset looking over the Caribbean from the lodge in the Santa Marta Mountains. Just kind of proves that the accommodations that are available in Colombia are spectacular in many ways. So one of the birds we look for, starting in the drier areas around the Guajira, is a double-striped thick-knee, very cool bird-handed. And there's plenty of crested bobwhite to be had as well. It's really, really fun bird to see in the area. You can get little coveys here and there. And then this is kind of a neat shot. You can see the actual cacti coming up out of the Guajira Peninsula there, and you have two endemic species right there, chestnut-winged chachalaca and bare-eyed pigeon, both only found in those dreary habitats. The Rey Guajira, or king of the Guajira Peninsula, is the vermilion cardinal, another endemic with a huge bill and a really cool mohawk. Now, there's pied puffbirds here too in the mangroves, which again, I mentioned before, we like to look for some of your more widespread but interesting subspecies. The sapphire-bellied hummingbird is only known from a few locations on Earth in this area of Colombia. Maybe as few as 500 or 600 exist. And black-backed antshrike, a cool antshrike we look for, are way up as we rise in elevation. So we kind of started in the lowlands and we're working our way up the mountain a little bit. Gray-throated leaf tosser, one of the best places to see this sort of tricky understory leaf tossing species, is in the Santa Marta Mountains. Santa Marta brush finch, not so hard to see. It's one of those endemics that's pretty much a gimme, and they're really kind of fun to watch in their family group antics. Buffy hummingbird is found on the Guajira Peninsula, one of the drab hummingbirds, but with a very, very tiny range. Contrasts a lot with the white-tailed star-frontlet, which is only seen in the high Santa Marta Mountains, but actually comes to the feeders sometimes at the lodge there. It's just a stunning bird. It looks like it's been dipped in white paint. Really spectacular, high elevation endemic species. Another endemic species there, which on occasion gets as low as the lodge, but we usually look for high up, is the black-backed thornbill. Replaces purple-backed thornbill in the Santa Marta Mountains there. And down on the way here, if you're lucky, you might stumble into a ruby topaz hummingbird, a wide-ranging hummingbird, but spectacularly colored. Violet-crowned wood nymph is common at the feeders in the Santa Marta area. And they've even got black-fronted wood quail coming to the corn and millet feeders at the lodge in the Santa Marta Mountains as well. One of the easier wood quails to see because they pop up to eat. One of the harder endemics in the area is the Parakeet thistletail. It's really only known from a few kilometers stretch of road in high elevation mountains of Parakeet right at tree line. I was pretty lucky to snap this pic, but yeah, nice little thistletail only found in the Parakeet Mountains. And equally range restricted, Santa Marta screech owl, beautiful screech owl that we make good efforts to find and often do on our tours to the area. Santa Marta parakeet, a beautiful little parura seen in high elevations. We drive way up to this little lagoon at about 2,700 meters elevation to wake up to these guys, actually, or they wake up to us, I should say. Santa Marta warbler, also found in those high elevation forests where we go look for the parakeets. And white-tipped quetzal, one of the more spectacular quetzals, and frequently seen from around our lodge. And that wraps up our run through, again, one of my favorite countries on earth, Colombia. I hope all of you get the chance, opportunity to visit Colombia. It's an amazing place to go. And while this tour, I mean, this sort of webinar paralleled one of our more intensive, longer tours, the mega tour, we have several offerings in Colombia, anything from a week to a month. And you can enjoy as much or as little as you want everywhere you go in the country is really interesting, unique, and fun.